What's smoking, y'all? It's your boy Mel, and welcome back to Smokin'Kitchen. As y'all can see from that title, we still getting into Mardi Gras over here. We got authentic New Orleans style red beans and rice. Red beans and rice is a dish traditionally made on Monday in New Orleans. You know, you go ahead, you prep your ingredients, throw it in a pot. You know, you go do some household chores. You know, you start getting your house together, you know, for the rest of the week. Get some laundry done, something like that. Just let it cook over. Just let it cook over, you know, on the stove for a couple hours, and you got a meal. When I say this is a meal, this is the meal that is ready in just a few hours with some simple ingredients that you got to put into a pot. So when I say this dish is packed with flavor, I mean it is absolutely packed with flavor. Hey, so let's grab our ingredients and get right into it. First thing you need is definitely a pot big enough to fit everything. So grab the biggest pot you got in your pantry. We're gonna first preheat the pot, then add our oil and our sausage into it. Now for the sausage, we're looking for it to get nice and brown, and you know, leave some of the drippings into the pan, and you know, all that oil, all that flavor. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna take the sausage out of the pot. Next thing that I like to do personally, I like to brown the meat that I'm putting into it. So you know, you can either go with ham hocks that you soaked in water overnight, or in this case, I'm going with turkey. I got some turkey wings and some turkey thighs that I'm essentially going to brown, you know, just to sear the meat and, you know, boost the flavor of it. Doesn't need too long, just a couple minutes on each side until you get a nice good sear. And then we're gonna pull that from the pot, and then we're gonna throw in our Trinity. You know what our Trinity is? Onions, bell peppers, and celery. And we're gonna cook these down until softened. After a couple minutes, we're gonna add that garlic, and as y'all already know, I like a good amount of garlic, so I added around 8 cloves of garlic into this. You can go more, you can go less, depending on your tolerance of garlic, but I love that nature's medicine. So once that garlic has had time to become fragrant, we're going to add in our pre-soaked red kidney beans, and we're gonna mix that with our softened vegetables. Right here, I'm gonna add half of my chicken stock and start seasoning my pot. It's just a mix of my homemade Creole seasoning. You can use whatever Creole that you have on hand, some black pepper and some white pepper if you have it. After I have all of that seasoning mixed in, I'm gonna go back and add back in my andouille sausage, and then we're gonna mix until it's all well distributed. And right here, I'm doing a quick taste test. I haven't added any additional salt at the moment, so I'm just checking to see what my salt levels are like. Then you're gonna add in your meat of choice. So again, you know, I went with turkey wings. Turkey legs, so I'm gonna add that into the pot. Now here, you're gonna make sure your meat and beans are covered in liquid by about an inch or so. So I'm adding a couple more cups of chicken stock, and then I'm gonna top it off with about 2 cups of water. I took note of the salt content of my pot, so I added about a tablespoon of kosher salt and a little bit of more Creole, and mix that until well combined. Then we're just gonna put a lid over this and simmer it for around 2 to 2.5 hours. After around 2.5 hours, I removed the turkey from the pot, and I went ahead and shredded it with my hands. So I'm just removing all of the bone and the gristle, you know, anything not edible from my turkey. And then I'm just gonna give everything a good rough chop. So here I'm just making sure that, you know, there's no skinny bones in there, and then I'm just chopping it into medium-sized pieces. And before we add that back into our pot, this step is totally optional. I like my red beans and rice a little bit on the thicker side, so I removed around 2 cups of the red beans, and I took a potato masher and I just mashed it. The starch from the mashed beans mixed back into the pot is going to thicken it without having to add any cornstarch or flour or anything like that. So I'm gonna take my mashed beans, and I'm gonna pour it back into my pot, and we're just gonna mix everything until well combined. And at this point, I have everything back into my pot. I have my meat and my mashed beans. I'm gonna simmer it for around another hour or so. And now it's time for the best part of the night, the plating. So I went ahead, I made some jasmine rice on the side. Gonna put that into the middle of a bowl, and I'm gonna add a couple of scoops of that red beans and rice on the outside, and we are in business. And this is some red beans and rice, y'all. Like I said, this really didn't take too much time. It really took around 10 minutes to build the pot, and then it simmered for 2.5 hours. Took the meat out, shredded it, put it back, mashed a bowl of beans, you know, stirred those two back into the pot, simmered for another hour, and you are left with a flavorful, delicious bowl of authentic New Orleans red beans and rice. Not rushed, no shortcuts, creamy, rich, full of depth, red beans and rice. If you enjoyed this recipe, please make sure you stick around. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Mel. This is Smokin'Kitchen, and I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.